A billionaire single dad hired a maid to take care of his daughter. She cooked his meals, organized his home, and made his little girl smile for the first time since her mother died. He started falling for her. But one night, he came home early and caught her photographing his private files. When he confronted her, she said 5 words that destroyed his entire world. "Your wife was murdered." And the killer? The man he trusted most. The man he called his mentor. His business partner. His family. What she revealed next put everyone he loved in danger. Stay until the end. The night Adrian Cole found his maid unconscious on his kitchen floor, blood pooling from a bullet wound in her shoulder and a crumpled photograph of his dead wife clutched in her trembling hand, he understood with sickening clarity that Elena Voss, the woman who had spent 3 months making his daughter laugh, challenging his ego, and quietly stealing his heart, was not who she said she was. And the secret she carried was about to burn his entire world to the ground. But to understand how a billionaire and his mate ended up here, bleeding and broken on Italian marble, we need to go back 3 months, to the morning everything began. Adrian Cole did not believe in first impressions. At 25, he had built a $4 billion tech empire, buried a wife, and learned to change diapers at 3 in the morning, all while Forbes called him the most eligible single father in America. He had learned that people were never what they seemed. Smiles hid agendas. Kindness hid conditions. And every single nanny or housekeeper he had hired in the past year had either sold stories to tabloids, tried to seduce him, or quit after 1 week of dealing with his 5-year-old daughter Lily's habit of hiding frogs in the laundry. So when Elena Voss walked into his penthouse for the interview, Adrian was already prepared to say no. He was not prepared for her. She was older than every other candidate, late 40s he guessed, but she moved through his foyer like she owned it. Long silky hair the color of dark honey framed a face that was striking in its quiet confidence. Fair skin. Sharp cheekbones. Eyes the color of winter, pale and intelligent and carrying something heavy behind them. She wore a simple black dress that somehow made the $100,000 art on his walls look cheap. "You're late," Adrian said, leaning against the doorframe of his study with his arms crossed, his signature smirk firmly in place. "You're shorter than you look on magazine covers," she replied without missing a beat. He blinked. Then, despite himself, he laughed. "I'm 6'1". The cameras must be generous." He studied her resume. It was sparse, almost suspiciously so. Work history at a small hotel in Vermont. A reference from a retired professor. No social media. No digital footprint at all. "You don't exist online," he said. "In 2024, that's either impressive or terrifying." "Perhaps both," Elena said, and something flickered in her eyes, there and gone, like a candle in a draft. Before he could press further, a small tornado in pink pajamas came barreling down the hallway. Lily crashed into Elena's legs, looked up at the stranger with enormous brown eyes, and said, "Do you like frogs?" Elena knelt down, meeting Lily at eye level. "I love frogs," she said softly. "When I was your age, I kept one named Ferdinand." Lily's face split into a grin so wide it could have powered the city. She grabbed Elena's hand and dragged her toward the garden, chattering about her frog collection. Adrian watched them go, something unfamiliar tugging at his chest. He hired her that afternoon. Against his better judgment. Against every instinct honed by years of betrayal. He would later wonder if that was the moment fate set its trap, or if fate had nothing to do with it at all. The first 2 weeks passed in a strange, quiet revolution. Elena transformed the penthouse from a sterile monument to wealth into something that felt, impossibly, like a home. She cooked meals that made Adrian abandon his personal chef. She organized his chaotic library. She sang to Lily in Italian while braiding her hair, and for the first time in 2 years, Lily stopped asking when Mommy was coming back. Adrian noticed everything. He noticed how Elena's hands trembled slightly when she poured coffee. how she avoided mirrors. How she sometimes stood at the living room window at night, staring out at the city skyline as though she were looking for someone, or making sure no one was looking for her. He also noticed, with increasing frustration, that he could not stop watching her. "You're staring again," Elena said one evening, not looking up from the book she was reading in the kitchen. Lily was asleep. The penthouse was quiet. "I'm observing," Adrian corrected, pouring himself a glass of whiskey. "There's a difference." "The difference being?" "Staring is rude. Observing is strategic." Elena finally looked up, and the hint of a smile played on her lips. "And what has your strategic observation concluded?" He sat across from her, close enough that he caught the faint scent of jasmine. "That you're overqualified. That you're hiding something. And that you make the best carbonara I've ever tasted, which is why I'm choosing to overlook the first two things." She held his gaze. In the warm kitchen light, the years between them dissolved into something less like a number and more like a dare. "Everyone hides something, Adrian. Not me. I'm an open book. You're a locked vault with a charming smile painted on the door." The words hit closer to home than he wanted to admit. He raised his glass. "Touché. If you are already hooked on Adrian and Elena's story, hit that like button right now. Trust me, you are not ready for what happens next." Week 4. The Gala. Adrian's company, Cole Technologies, was hosting its annual charity event, a glittering affair attended by every power player in the city. His business partner and CFO, Richard Graves, had organized the evening. Richard was 55, silver-haired, immaculately dressed, and possessed the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. He had been Adrian's late wife Catherine's godfather and had stepped in as Adrian's mentor after her death, guiding the young billionaire through grief and corporate warfare alike. Adrian trusted Richard completely. Elena was helping Adrian adjust his tie in the foyer when Richard's limousine pulled up on the security monitor. She glanced at the screen and froze. Every drop of color drained from her face. Her hands, still holding Adrian's tie, went rigid. "Elena?" Adrian frowned. "What's wrong?" She released him and stepped back, composing herself with visible effort. "Nothing. You should go. You'll be late." But Adrian had seen the look in her eyes. It was not surprise. It was terror. At the gala, Richard was his usual commanding presence, working the room with practiced ease. But twice during the evening, Adrian caught Richard asking pointed questions about his household staff. Who had he hired recently? Had they been properly vetted? "Why the sudden interest in my maid?" Adrian asked, keeping his tone light. Richard's smile did not waver. "Just looking out for you, son. You know how people try to get close to men like us." That night, when Adrian came home, he found Elena sitting on Lily's bedroom floor, the little girl asleep with her head in Elena's lap. Elena was stroking Lily's hair, and in the dim light, Adrian saw something he had never seen before. Elena was crying. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just silent tears tracking down her face, as though a dam she had built long ago had developed a crack she could not repair. He did not say anything. He leaned against the doorframe and watched, and he felt something inside his own carefully constructed walls begin to fracture. Drop a comment right now telling me what you think Elena's secret is. And subscribe so you do not miss the moment the truth comes out, because it is coming, and it will change everything. Week 6. The dynamic between them had shifted into something electric and dangerous. They orbited each other like binary stars, too close for safety, too bound by gravity to pull away. "You know," Adrian said one morning, watching Elena reach for a high shelf in the library, "most of my employees are intimidated by me." "Most of your employees haven't seen you try to assemble furniture." She glanced back at him with a raised eyebrow. "You nearly cried. I did not cry. I expressed frustration through my eyes. That's crying, Adrian. It's strategic moisture. She laughed, a real laugh, unguarded and warm, and it hit him like a physical force. He realized, standing there in a room full of first edition books and morning light, that he was falling in love with this woman. This mysterious, maddening, beautiful woman who was 23 years his senior and hiding enough secrets to fill every book on these shelves. Then he did something reckless. He crossed the room, took the book from her hand, set it on the shelf, and stood close enough that he could count the flecks of silver in her blue eyes. "Have dinner with me," he said. "Not here. Out. Somewhere with candles and wine lists that require a second mortgage." Elena's breath caught. For a moment, just a moment, her composure cracked, and he saw the wanting underneath. Raw. Aching. Real. "Adrian," she whispered. "You don't know who I am." "Then tell me." The silence between them was a living thing. Her eyes searched his face, and he watched her weigh something invisible and enormous. Then the moment shattered. Her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, and the blood drained from her face again, just like the night of the gala. "I have to go," she said, pulling away. "Lily needs her bath." Lily was at a playdate. That night, after the penthouse fell silent, Adrian did something he had promised himself he would not do. He went to his study, opened his laptop, and began to dig. The name Elena Voss returned nothing. No birth certificate. No license history beyond 2 years ago. No tax records, no school transcripts, no trace of existence before she appeared at that small Vermont hotel. Elena Voss was a ghost. And ghosts, Adrian knew, were just people with something worth dying to protect. It was a Wednesday when the first wall came down. Adrian had come home early from the office and heard sounds from his study, a room that was always locked when he was not home. He moved silently down the hallway. The door was ajar. Elena was inside. She had his private laptop open, and she was photographing files, financial records, transaction histories, documents from the deepest servers of Cole Technologies. She was also crying. "What are you doing?" Adrian's voice was cold. Colder than he intended, colder than he felt, because what he actually felt was the ground opening beneath his feet. Elena turned. She did not try to hide anything. She did not run. She stood there, tears streaming, phone in hand, and the look on her face was not the look of a thief caught stealing. It was the look of a woman who had just found proof of something terrible. "Your wife didn't die in a car accident, Adrian." Elena's voice broke apart on his name. "She was murdered. And the man who killed her is the same man you call your most trusted friend." The room went very, very still. "Richard Graves killed Catherine. And he is going to kill you next. This is the moment that changes everything." If your heart is pounding right now, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what Elena reveals next will leave you speechless. It took 4 hours, an entire bottle of whiskey, and every ounce of control Adrian possessed to hear the full story without breaking something. Elena's real name was Elena Castellano. 10 years ago, she had been one of the most powerful women in real estate, a self-made billionaire who had built an empire from nothing. Her partner, both in business and in life, was a man named Richard Graves. They had built everything together. Or so she believed. What Elena did not know was that Richard had been systematically stealing from their company for years, laundering money through shell corporations and offshore accounts. When Elena noticed discrepancies and started asking questions, Richard moved swiftly. He forged documents making it look like Elena was the one embezzling. He bribed officials. He manipulated the board. In a single week, Elena lost everything. Her company. Her reputation. Her homes. Her name branded in every newspaper with the word fraud. She was facing criminal charges built on fabricated evidence. Then came the night someone tried to kill her. A car ran her off a mountain road in Switzerland. She survived only because a passing truck driver pulled her from the wreckage. She spent 3 months in a hospital under a false name, healing bones and planning her next move. The authorities ruled the crash an accident. Elena knew better. She disappeared. Became Elena Voss. Worked menial jobs. Lived in the shadows. And she spent every spare moment gathering evidence against the man who had destroyed her. Then, 18 months into her investigation, she found something she never expected. Financial records showed that Richard Graves had invested his stolen money into a tech startup called Cole Technologies, founded by a young genius named Adrian Cole. Richard had wormed his way into Adrian's company, become his CFO, his mentor, his surrogate father figure. He was bleeding Adrian's company the same way he had bled Elena's. And then Elena found the police report for Catherine Cole's death. The car accident. The convenient timing, just weeks after Catherine had been given access to the company's financial servers as part of her role in the Cole Foundation. The mechanics report that was buried. The brake line that had been cut. She found the same discrepancies I found, Elena told Adrian, her voice hollow. She discovered what Richard was doing to your company. And he killed her for it, just like he tried to kill me. Adrian sat in silence for a long time. His hands were shaking. The whiskey glass had cracked in his grip, and thin lines of blood traced his palm, but he did not seem to notice. Why didn't you just tell me? His voice was barely above a whisper. Why the disguise? Why the Maid act? Because I didn't know if I could trust you, Elena said honestly. You were his protégé. His golden boy. For all I knew, you were part of it. I needed to get close. I needed to see the files myself. I needed proof. And now? Elena reached across the table and gently uncurled his bleeding fingers. She pulled a glass shard from his palm with surgical precision, then pressed a cloth napkin against the wound. Her touch was impossibly gentle. Now I know exactly who you are, Adrian Cole, she said softly. You're a good man who has been surrounded by wolves. And I am so sorry for all of it. He looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman who had lied to him every single day. The woman who had mothered his daughter back to joy. The woman who carried the weight of a stolen life in her shoulders and still had the strength to stand. I should fire you, he said. You should. I should call the police. You probably should. He leaned forward, close enough that his forehead nearly touched hers. I should definitely not be falling in love with you. Her breath hitched. A tear slid down her cheek. Definitely not. He kissed her anyway. It was not a gentle kiss. It was the kind of kiss born from grief and rage and months of restraint finally snapping. It tasted like whiskey and blood and the terrifying, exhilarating freefall of choosing someone despite every rational reason not to. When they pulled apart, Elena pressed her hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat hammer against her palm. This is going to get very dangerous, she said. I know. Richard will find out about me. About what we know. He will come for us. Adrian's jaw set. The playful, witty billionaire was gone. In his place was something harder, sharper, a man who had just learned that his wife was murdered by the person he trusted most, and who was now ready to go to war. Let him come, Adrian said. They spent the next 3 weeks building their case in secret. During the day, Elena maintained her role as housekeeper, and Adrian played the oblivious CEO. At night, they pored over financial records, encrypted communications, and transaction logs that painted a damning portrait of Richard Graves' decades of fraud, theft, and murder. They also fell deeper into something neither of them had planned for. "You're doing it again," Elena murmured one night, catching Adrian's gaze across the table covered in documents. "Doing what?" "That thing where you look at me like I'm a problem you're trying to solve." He smiled, slow and devastating. "You are a problem. A beautiful, infuriating, wildly complicated problem." "Flattering. I mean it. You've ruined me, Elena. I used to be productive. Now I spend board meetings thinking about the way you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're reading." She shook her head, but her cheeks flushed, a rare and precious thing. "You're 25 years old, Adrian. And you're the most extraordinary woman I've ever met." "I don't care about the number. The world will care. The world thought I was too young to build a billion-dollar company." "The world was wrong then too." She looked at him for a long moment, and in her eyes he saw the war, desire against doubt, hope against the habit of expecting the worst. Then she leaned across the table and kissed him softly. "You are impossible," she whispered against his lips. "Impossibly charming? Impossibly stubborn. I'll take it." But Richard Graves had not survived 40 years in the shadows by being careless. It happened on a Friday afternoon. Adrian was at the office when his phone rang. It was Margaret, his building's concierge. "Mr. Cole, there are men here. They have a court order. They're saying they have temporary emergency custody of your daughter." The world stopped. Adrian broke every speed limit in the city getting home. He called Elena. No answer. He called again. Nothing. When he burst through the penthouse doors, the apartment was empty. Lily's room, her pink blankets, her stuffed frog Ferdinand II, her tiny shoes lined up by the door, all untouched. But Lily was gone. On the kitchen counter was a single note in Richard's precise handwriting. "You should have stayed blind, son. Now you'll learn what it costs to see." Elena appeared in the doorway 30 seconds later, breathless and pale. She had been downstairs, trying to stop the men with the court order. They had badges. Legal documents. A judge's signature. "He forged a custody filing," Elena said, her voice shaking with fury. "He used fabricated evidence. Drug tests, psychiatric evaluations, all fake. He's had a judge in his pocket for years. Adrian, he has Lily." Adrian sank to his knees on the kitchen floor. For the first time since Catherine died, he broke. Not quietly, not strategically. He broke the way a father breaks when his child is taken, completely, savagely, with a sound that came from somewhere deeper than grief. Elena knelt beside him. She took his face in her hands. "Look at me," she said. "Adrian. Look at me." He did. Through blurred eyes, through the wreckage of everything. "We are going to get her back," Elena said, and her voice carried the steel of a woman who had lost everything once and survived. "I swear to you on my life. We will get her back. If you are watching this with tears in your eyes, you are not alone. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and stay with me, because the final chapter of Adrian and Elena's fight is about to unfold." Elena Castellano had spent 2 years as a ghost. But ghosts have one advantage the living do not. They have nothing left to lose. Within hours, Elena activated a network she had built during her years in hiding. Former employees who still believed in her innocence. A retired federal prosecutor who owed her a favor. A private investigator who had been quietly tracking Richard's movements for months. "He'll take her to the Graves estate upstate," Elena told Adrian as they drove through the night. "It's remote. Private. He'll use Lily as leverage to force you to sign over controlling interest in Cole Technologies. Once he has the company, he won't need the child anymore." The implication hung in the air like poison. He won't touch her, Adrian said, his voice a blade. We'll end him together. But we do it right. We do it so he never hurts anyone again. They reached the estate at dawn. The evidence they had compiled, years of financial fraud, the proof of Catherine's murder, the forged custody documents, had been transmitted to the FBI 2 hours earlier. But bureaucracy moves slowly, and Lily was behind those gates now. Adrian wanted to storm the entrance. Elena stopped him. If you go in there reckless, he wins. He's expecting rage. Give him something he's not expecting. What? Surrender. Adrian stared at her. You want me to give him my company. I want you to make him think you're giving him your company. Just long enough for him to let his guard down, release Lily into your arms, and for the evidence to reach the right hands. It was a gamble. A desperate, terrible gamble. But Adrian looked at Elena, this woman who had been stripped of everything and rebuilt herself from ash, and he trusted her. They approached the estate together. Richard met them in his study, Lily sitting on a leather couch behind him, clutching Ferdinand II with wide, frightened eyes. Daddy, she cried. I'm here, baby, Adrian said, his voice miraculously steady. I'm right here. Richard smiled that cold, perfect smile. I knew you'd come to your senses. Sit down, Adrian. Let's discuss the transfer of. He stopped. His eyes had moved past Adrian to the woman standing behind him. For 3 full seconds, Richard Graves looked at Elena Castellano, and the mask fell. Something ancient and ugly moved behind his eyes. Recognition. Shock. Then cold, calculating fury. Elena, he breathed. You're supposed to be dead. Sorry to disappoint, Elena said. Richard's composure returned instantly. He reached into his desk drawer, and when his hand came back, it held a gun. Well, he said quietly. This simplifies things. What happened next took 11 seconds. Adrian lunged for Lily. Elena stepped between Richard and Adrian. Richard fired. The bullet caught Elena in the shoulder, spinning her backward. Adrian scooped Lily into his arms and threw himself behind the desk. Elena hit the floor hard, blood blooming across her shirt, but she was conscious. She was reaching for her phone. She was pressing send on a recording that had been capturing every word since they walked in. Richard aimed again. But the sound that filled the room was not another gunshot. It was sirens. A wall of them, growing louder, closer, unstoppable. The FBI had arrived. Richard looked at the window, at the flashing lights pouring through the estate gates, and for the first time in his carefully controlled life, his hands shook. You planned this, he whispered. Elena, bleeding on the floor, smiled. I've had 2 years to plan this, Richard. You took everything from me. My company. My name. My life. You killed an innocent woman because she got too close to the truth. But you forgot the most important thing. What's that? People like me don't stay dead. The doors burst open. Agents flooded the room. Richard Graves was forced to his knees, handcuffed, read his rights. He was still staring at Elena as they dragged him out, the ghost who had come back to bury him. Adrian pressed his jacket against Elena's wound, his hands trembling, his daughter clinging to his neck. Stay with me, he said. Elena, stay with me. She looked up at him, pale and fading, and even now, even bleeding on a cold floor, she smiled. I told you, she murmured. This was going to get dangerous. You also told me we'd get her back. You kept your promise. Now keep one more. Don't leave me. Adrian. I don't care about the age difference. I don't care about what the world will say. I don't care about any of it. Just stay. Her eyes fluttered. The paramedics were rushing in. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, she reached for his hand and held it with what little strength she had left. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. "I've been a ghost long enough." 6 months later, the courtroom was packed the day Richard Graves was sentenced to life in prison for murder, fraud, and kidnapping. Elena Castellano testified for 3 hours, and when she was done, the gallery was silent. The evidence was overwhelming. The stolen empire was returned. Elena's name was cleared. But for Elena, the verdict was not the moment that mattered most. The moment that mattered was later that evening, in the penthouse that was now her home, when Lily ran into the kitchen holding a jar and announced, "Elena, Ferdinand II has a girlfriend. Her name is Penelope." Elena laughed, scooping the little girl into her arms. "Well, Ferdinand is a very lucky frog." Adrian leaned against the doorframe, the same doorframe where he had stood months ago, watching a stranger cry over his sleeping daughter and feeling his walls begin to fall. He watched the two people he loved most in the world, and he felt something he had forgotten was possible. Wholeness. Later, after Lily was asleep, Elena found him on the balcony, staring at the city lights. "You're brooding," she said, stepping beside him. "I'm reflecting. There's a difference." "The difference being?" "Brooding is dramatic. Reflecting is mature." She raised an eyebrow. "You? Mature? I'm a work in progress." She laughed softly, and he pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She leaned into him, and for a long moment they stood there, two people who had been broken by the world and somehow found each other in the wreckage. "People will talk," Elena said quietly. "About the age gap. About everything." "Let them," Adrian said. "I spent my whole life building things other people said were impossible. You're just the best thing I've ever built toward." She tilted her head up to look at him. In the city light, her eyes shimmered. That was almost poetic. "I've been practicing. You should practice more." He kissed her, slow and deliberate, on the balcony above a city that had tried to swallow them both. And somewhere in the apartment behind them, a 5-year-old girl slept peacefully with a stuffed frog named Ferdinand II, dreaming the kind of dreams that only happen when you feel completely, unshakably safe. Elena Castellano had entered Adrian Cole's life as a maid with a secret. She left it as the woman who saved his daughter, exposed a murderer, reclaimed her stolen life, and taught a young man who had everything that the most valuable thing in the world cannot be bought. It can only be earned, through trust, through courage, and through the terrifying, magnificent act of letting someone truly see you. Some people come into your life to clean your house. Some come to clean your soul. And if you are very lucky, if you are brave enough to let them stay, they do not just change your world. They become it. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, do me a favor. Hit that like button, leave a comment telling me which moment hit you the hardest, and subscribe to this channel. Every story we share here is about ordinary people facing extraordinary moments, and your support is what keeps these stories alive. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that it is never too late to start over, and that love does not check your age, your past, or your scars. It just asks you to show up. Thank you for being here. And remember, the people who change your life the most rarely look like what you expected.